access the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, Green Lantern fans, welcome back to the podcast of OA. This is episode number 252. I'm co-host Myron Rumsey, joined by my good friend on the other end, Mr. Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, it's getting to be that time of the year.
It is. It is. I decorated the you-know-what out of my house last week. So
The Dickens.
I had some choice battles with some of my lights, but I prevailed. That's all that matters.
It just took some willpower, right?
Did. But all set up. All looks
Cool.
good.
Cool.
Tis
Well,
the season.
exactly. I'll let you know. I have not got a thing up yet.
No, well, it's early.
I don't even have my leg lamp in the window. So
I got I'm okay after Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, you want to start doing crap, that's fine. Anything before that, I'm usually not too hip to it. But I did,
No.
however, I was premeditated enough to where I got my outdoor lights up because it's 15 degrees here tonight. So, yeah. Luckily, I did that last week. So,
you got to take advantage of that when you can.
yeah, it was smart thinking. So,
That's right. That's right. Well, we've got some catching up to do.
we do.
So this episode, we are going to touch upon Green Lantern Civil Corps Special, number one. Well, number one. I guess I call it number one, even though it's a one shot. And then we're going to cover Green Lantern issues 16 and 17 and get ourselves all caught up because there's some good news coming out. Coming up in February, Green Lantern Corps returns as a series. We're getting a second book. Couldn't be more excited. Jeremy Adams and Morgan Hampton writing the book. Art by Fernando Passarin and Eau Claire Auber. I think he's just doing the cover of the first issue, though. But couldn't be more excited to see a Green Lantern Corps book. We've been talking about it. It's funny. You and I just recorded with our friends from the Lantern Cast not too long ago, and that was a common thread. We need a Green Lantern Corps book. So couldn't be happier to see that happening.
And not only that, Adams is on it. And keep in mind, too, Adams is taking over the helm of Aquaman. Which
Yes.
is one of my favorites. So I'm super stoked to see where he's going to take that character. The first preview of that was pretty awesome. It comes out Wednesday, I think. Yeah.
Adams is kind of becoming the new guy. You know, the guy who's taken over a lot of these books. He reminds me of not that he reminds me, but his career path reminds me very much of Jeff Johns.
I mean, it really does. It's kind of like a rebirth thing, right? He did the Flash already. He did Green Lantern. It was kind of a rebirth of that, so to speak. I mean, and more or less, this is a rebirth of Aquaman because he hasn't been around for a little while.
Yeah.
So
Johns went from Flash to Green Lantern to Aquaman.
the same methodology. So,
Yeah. So no, it's exciting news. I can't wait for that because I think, as we start talking about these issues, that's my one criticism is it seems like the Green Lantern book has become a Green Lantern Corps book all of a sudden. And again, nothing wrong with that because we need a Green Lantern Corps book. But I can't wait for it to be its own thing.
Mhm.
But other Green Lantern news, there are a couple of omnibuses out. Green Lantern Corps, the Peter Tomasi run, volume number 2. Have not grabbed that one at all. It's on my Christmas list. I'm hoping my wife gets it for me. But the other one, the one that has me the most excited is the Hard Traveling Heroes omnibus that just came out. And I mean, I have the absolute of the Hard Traveling Heroes, and I have the hardcover that came out for the Space Traveling Heroes when Neil Adams, when they relaunched after the book was canceled, and it was Denny O'Neil and Mike Grell, and they relaunched. It was more of a space book at that point. So it collects both of those runs. But what really had me jazzed, even though I have both of those already in other formats, is this has all the material that happened that got released in other books in between the time that the Neil Adams and Danny O'Neil run got canceled and the time it was relaunched with Mike Grell, because there for a while, Flash served as the main title, and in the backups was Green Lantern, Green Arrow. So those issues have never really been collected before. So the only way to get them is to hunt them down. Getting them here is great. I mean, it's a high price tag to pay for just those. But if you don't have the other two runs, this is a great collection. I have not had a chance to dive through it yet. This is on my list for what I'm going to be doing a little light reading over the Christmas break that's coming up. I have not read. I've read all of it except for the Flash stuff. So I'm really interested in reading that. I might actually skip over Hard Traveling Heroes and jump to that. I don't know. I haven't quite decided. But exciting stuff.
Hey, well, this is not Green Lantern related, but I can share my
Oh,
omnibus.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Not really an omnibus, but it's a compendium. Boom, look at that guy.
Wow.
I mean, look at how thick that is. It's like
Wow.
my hand. Yep, the beauty.
Wow.
Now, what I did learn is this collects numbers 1 through 50. Now, Hama's been writing this since the beginning, so I think they're up over issue 300, and this is only volume 1, compendium 1, so this is gonna be it's gonna be a shelf hog.
Now, have they announced the other parts of that?
I don't think they have. This was a
Gotcha.
Kickstarter part, right? So,
Oh, okay.
right. So I think actually this was a Kickstarter version, if I'm not mistaken. The only downside it is it came with I don't know if you can see it. It came with a page that's creased.
Oh,
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. And if you pull it out, it kind of extends out and it comes outside of the book. Hold on.
did you back this on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Have you reached out to them to report it? Maybe they'll send you another copy.
Nah, I'm not too. I mean, it's for me. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm
I
keeping
would,
it for myself because I'm going to read it.
I wouldn't get rid of it. I'd just see if they'd replace it.
I can't.
I mean,
I don't know.
you paid good money. I don't know. It's all
I
it's
did.
your call.
I did. So that came. That's a Merry Christmas to me.
Nice. Nice.
Mm.
Um, other Green
So I'm
Lantern related
sporting it.
news. Oh, you're sporting the Joe. Yeah. The more you know.
That's right.
Lanterns news. There's been some more casting since we last spoke. Um, some of this may be, if you've been following things, you may already have known all this stuff, but Kelly MacDonald from the show Boardwalk Empire has accepted the role of Sheriff Carey, who basically, they keep saying that she's rumored to be a love interest for Hal, but in the description of the character, it says she's deeply devoted to her family. So I'm not, maybe she's not married. I don't know. Maybe her family is her parents and whatnot. And then another character is Garrett Dillahunt has the role of William Macon, who is a conspiracy-minded modern cowboy. Um, and he's considered a major recurring role, and he's been referred to as somewhat of an antagonist. Whether he's the big bad or not, couldn't tell you.
He
The
was
most
in he played in Justified.
in Justified.
Yeah, he was in a season of Justified. Good character, good guy.
And the most recent character they announced, most recent casting they announced, I should say, and I apologize if I mispronounced her name, but it looks like it's Jaganathan. And she is playing a character called Zoe, who is considered to be this really powerful female character who also may be the love interest for Jon Stewart.
Hmm.
It's been interesting in the recent weeks. There's been a lot of how do I want to describe this? Some interviews and stuff being done by Gunn and by Tom King, kind of reinforcing the casting. I think they've heard the casting pushback, and so
Right.
they're kind of trying to do a little bit of damage control. In my opinion, that's my opinion only. Uh, it just seems like they're trying to put a little bit of damage control in place because there has been some pushback. Um, and I don't think they're going to change anything. I mean, you've signed contracts. It's kind of a done deal. Doesn't mean
Well,
that
I mean, when it comes down to it, it's the dude's vision on what he wants to do, right? He's already rung that bell. You can't unring it now.
right, right. At
And
this point, it's too late.
yeah, so I mean, he's obviously got some vision that he's formulating a plan on. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. No, nobody out there but him and the other dude knows probably what it is. And even that said, he's the only one who knows really what it is. He's got his own thing. So it's like I understand like where well, I understand where you come from and everybody else comes from, but I don't know. I'm also a firm believer that I don't think the dude should be put under the guillotine just yet. I mean, he hasn't even made anything. I mean, give him a chance. I mean, Creature Commandos isn't even going to be a barometer to check to see how well he's going to handle the universe. You know what I mean? Superman's going to be that. And let that come out and see what it does first before everybody passes judgment on every decision that he makes. But
Mhm.
I get it. I mean,
Right.
it's in a shaky place, you know. WB's not in a
Sure.
good position, and they got to make this right and right the ship. If they don't, it's going to go down after it.
Right. Right. And what I think about Lanterns has no bearing about Superman, but all I can say is that I'm not going to enjoy the DC stuff as much because of Lanterns.
Yeah, and I don't
and
blame them.
and I won't be invested in it. And I'm not that kind of person who'll say, well, I'm not gonna go see the Superman movie. If it looks good, I'll go see it. It's not related in my mind. But
Right,
also, if Lanterns looks like I think it's gonna look, I'm not gonna watch it.
right.
Um, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Um, not to beat a dead horse, but there's ways it could have been done that would have appeased fans rather than making divisive decisions. You've got to have that in your mind when you're doing this stuff.
I agree, and I don't think we'd be having this conversation had there been a more conscious decision made about this that seemed to reflect more what I think the fan base could have wanted or should have might have wanted. I don't know. I don't know what the temperature of the fan base is, but it seemed like it was high on the side of why are you casting somebody that old for Hal? You know,
Right.
and that's I mean, if that's where your beam line is, right? So that's everybody's beef. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've always felt that I think a director should, I don't know, maybe involve the fans in some degree. Not saying there should be a casting call for all fans or whatnot, but maybe if you're a producer or something like that, you put some ideas out there, be like, hey, you know, I'm thinking about this guy for what do you guys think? You know, and just get the temperature of or even just know your fan base for that
I
matter.
mean, it wouldn't be hard for a production assistant to do the research and see what fans think about the characters.
Wouldn't be hard at
Um,
all. I mean, people
I
do it all the
mean,
time. Politics do it.
I mean, the thing is James Gunn is not terribly involved. I mean, this is a Linda Holf and Tom King thing, and he's basically just given him a stamp of approval. He's not intimately involved in it, but Tom King, as a comic book writer, has to know the pulse of the room. I mean, he lives in this universe. He writes these books, and he himself is not immune to making decisions that are divisive. And you could argue that, it's the creative process and let them tell their story. But if you're not going to be invested in the story, are you gonna attach your wagon to it? There's different kinds of comic book fans. Some people just want a good story. They're not emotionally invested in the characters. They just want a good story. And for them, they don't really care,
Right.
they just want a good story. You have other people, myself being one of them, who's emotionally invested in the franchise. I want to see the best of it. I want to see what it has to. I want the world to see in Green Lantern what I see in Green Lantern because I love it so much. And I think if you look at any franchise, that's what the diehard fans want, is they want people to feel the same way about the thing they love as they
Mhm.
do. And you can't do that with a 60-year-old Hal Jordan who sounds like he's going to be sidelined. But we'll see what happens when it comes out. We're still a long ways from seeing a release date, and maybe we'll get more information. I as I hear more and more, I get less and less interested, but I'm willing to say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. You know, it is what it is.
Stranger Things, let's move on.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Who knows? I might not even be around by the time this show comes out.
I mean, we have been talking about it for about a decade now, right?
In one form or another, right? Right. First, it was going to be the Jeff Johns Green Lantern Corps movie, and then it was going to be the other Green Lantern show, and now it's this version. But
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Anyway, we got some comics to talk about, which is far better conversation than listening to me go on and on and on. Plus, we've got lots of listener feedback, which is going to cause me to have to go over it again because we got a lot of feedback on our episode we did where I kind of did my rant. Um,
Awesome.
Anyway, let's take a quick pause. We'll come back and we'll start digging into the most recent Green Lantern books.
In brightest day or blackest night, there's only one place to listen to the best in Green Lantern. That's the podcast of Oa.
All right, welcome back. We are starting out our conversation tonight with Green Lantern Civil Corps Special. This was kind of a neat team up. There for a while, Jeremy Adams and Philip Kennedy Johnson had alluded to the fact that they were working on something together. This is it. This is this is where they start to tie together the storylines from Green Lantern War Journal and the Green Lantern series and tying them together and bringing these characters all together. And it's setting the stage for the return of the Green Lantern Corps. This issue, Adams and PKJ, written or artist is Salvador LaRocca, which I'm not sure if I'm familiar with his work, but I thought he did a good job for the most part with this issue.
Yeah, you killer art, especially that opening sequence where John's flying.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great looking shot of him.
I mean, my only initial downside to this book when I first started to see stuff about it was they gave away the Kilowog thing in the preview, and then they put him on the cover. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're gonna surprise us, surprise us. Anyway, starts out with we get a follow up with John, and it's John and Ellie, and Kilowog shows up, and he's is he a Yellow Lantern at this point, or is he a Spectrum Lantern? I think he's a Spectrum Lantern channeling yellow, but that's all we see him in. And the only reason why I say that is if he was truly a Yellow Lantern, wouldn't he have the Sinestro Corps logo? And he's got to be drawing his power from someplace else other than Korrigar, because as we know, Korrigar has been destroyed. So in my mind, he's a Spectrum Lantern. Did you read it that way, or did you not?
Yeah, which would add evidence to the fact the emotional spectrum's going chaos, which they got that new series, not the new series, but the new story arc is Spectrum Frenzy or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Fractured Spectrum.
Fractured Spectrum or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
would kind of add evidence to that, was kind of what I was reading it as.
Yeah. And just like that, John has lost the Dark Star ring. So he didn't have it very long as far as we can tell. But interesting to see Shepard and Hal and Guy Gardner on the new Justice League satellite. Nice to see that there's a Green Lantern wing on the satellite, which is pretty cool. I thought it was interesting that Carol's walking around in her civvies.
Until she changes.
And then she changes, and then it's like, oh, okay, this is a worse idea than dating Jordan, guy says. And I love again how Adams does a great job of capturing the voices of the characters. They feel like the characters you expect them to be, so that's good. Like seeing Jade Stone back
Hmm.
at this point of the who's guarding the battery. We'll see. But Guy's got the rings, and Guy gives one to Joe at one point. They charge the rings up. It was interesting. They didn't give John a new ring.
Well,
So
didn't he already have
it's
well,
supposed to have his mother in it, but
yeah. And
uh,
then he just got lost the Dark Star ring, so
yeah. So I'm assuming his mother, this is still the ring, because they make a point of showing Guy give a ring to Joe later on in the issue. They don't show John getting a new ring, and I wouldn't expect him to get a new ring. But I'm assuming his ring maybe functions differently than the other Green Lantern rings. It's hard to keep track of. I think one of the things I found as I was reading these issues, I was rereading them over the weekend. I almost needed a scorecard because there's some things I was like, I can't keep track of all of it. There's so many dangling plots right now and pieces of detail. I'm having a hard time. Maybe it's age. I'm having a hard time keeping on top of it all.
well, it
But
doesn't help when you got we got rings that are just not, for lack of a better words, not doing what they used to do before. Right?
yeah, yeah. And I think this is all just the upheaval. I think eventually it will settle down. At least I hope it does. But we see more of the unseen. We see Alan Scott arrive, which I thought, that was one of those like, oh yes, Alan Scott's there. I was great. I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, he's cool. I like his costume, man. It still looks awesome.
Yeah, it does a really good job there. I think actually that Salvador LaRocca draws Alan Scott better than he does some of the other lanterns. Like I didn't like Hal's hairstyle in this issue that much. It seemed a little unkempt and not quite as stylish as it usually is. Seeing the delegation go to Thanagar was interesting in how that all plays out. It turns out, the Thanagarians reach out to Theros, and he shows up and kind of spoils Hal's plans as he's trying to gather troops. And of course, the Thanagarian ambassador is a Durlan, because
Of
Durlan's
course.
gonna Durlan, Uh,
Pretty much.
so it was interesting. I thought it was interesting that it's interesting Carol's voice because Carol goes between the bossing Hal around and the we're not here to do this. We're not to the gosh, I don't want us like to be a hero thing. Uh, it's interesting. Like she seems to serve whatever purpose that Adams needs her to serve for the moment. It's interesting watching her journey as a superhero. She's now chosen to be a superhero because she did spend all that time, as much as I've tried to push it out of my mind, she spent all that time with Kyle Rayner in New Guardians, but she hasn't done the day-to-day superhero stuff. So that's how in my mind I'm like, well, she's only done the space thing. She hasn't done the rescue a kitten in the tree thing yet. So,
Well, she was in Justice League on Unlimited, the new
yep,
series that's
the
out.
new series. Yep, she had a really good moment in that.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing her well in there so far. One issue.
Yep, one issue in. It's Mark Waid, so you don't give it time. Um, because he says he can't write. His quality of his work is going to go down now.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. But the whole thing with Thanagar goes belly up, and it's at this point that the Durlans start to realize, this guy's a little unhinged, more unhinged than he should be, and he's really not serving our purpose. And so they're like, maybe we need to rein this guy in, because he kind of goes full Cthulhu there for a little bit.
Yeah, he totally did.
I loved seeing Guy and Shepard, as we had seen, their chemistry is so good,
They
so
work
good
well
together.
together. Yeah.
Just a lot of fun, and them going and finding Larfleeze and setting him loose was really great. And in the fight between the Unseen and Alan Scott, to me, it was one of the highlights of the issue. Probably more than some of the other stuff. But yeah, I love seeing Shepard try to bait these guys into following him so that Guy can set Larfleeze loose. Um,
Oh, that Larfleeze shot was awesome.
yeah, oh
When
yeah.
he's done that one page of the not the double page, but the thing, yeah. That's
I-
cool.
One of the things that I felt like was a subtle thing, but I picked up on it, and maybe it wasn't so subtle, was the whole thing with the Star Heart. Like, what does the unseen want with the Star Heart?
I never really thought about that, to be honest with you.
They make a whole thing about it here that, will tell us where it is, and they made a whole, they have a whole conversation about the Star Heart, and I'm like, man, what is it that they want with that? The unseen is something that I'd like to know more about the unseen, and I'm afraid we're not going to get it. But I think they're very interesting set of characters, and I really kind of want to know, well, what is their deal? Really, what is the deal with these guys?
I guess they're just running Oa now.
Well, it's odd because they're kind of Theros's right hand men, but they're mixing magic and a few other things together, and that's kind of why I think their interest in the Starheart is more from the magical perspective. But I don't know, I find them very interesting characters. I want to know more about them, but I feel like they're being set up to be wiped off the table in pretty short order.
Well, you know what? They're serving their purpose because they're supposed to be
Yeah.
the unseen.
Yeah. Well, I think they're the unseen because they can't see anything. But we'll see. Oh. Uh,
Maybe not.
I loved the fight with Hal and John versus the Star Shroud. I thought that was really cool. Um, and then Star Shroud was called on because Theros is getting out of hand, and then to see Star Shroud kill Theros, as I was reading it, I was like, oh man, that was kind of anticlimactic. But then you see what happens, that Theros is not really dead. The one thing that threw me off though was the panel where um he gets killed. His left hand is in the foreground and there's no ring on it. So as I was reading it, I was like, well, what the heck happened to the Dark Star ring? Because it's not here and you don't see it. I mean, just a couple pages before you see it on his hand.
That's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, I mean, 2 pages earlier,
Oh yeah.
it's there, and then 2 pages later, it's not. So I was thinking, well, in my head, it was like Star Shroud take it. It turns out it's still on his hand. It's just an art mistake. Um, And that's one of those pet peeves is those kind of mistakes, especially something as important as the Dark Star ring. That was the whole point of, having Kilowog steal it from John is to give it to Theros, to have it
Mhm.
not be there. I mean, there's other little things. I mean, there's a scene earlier when Guy takes his ring off and it's on his ring finger and not his middle finger. They're pet peeves.
I know, man.
Are they major
But
problems? But
you you'd be one of the few that notice little
I
quirky
pick
stuff
up on
like
that.
that.
I pick up on that crap all the time. It's like you wouldn't draw the Batman logo, the Bat logo, looking like a turkey. I mean, maybe you should have something as important as the other way.
Why
Anyway,
would you want to draw the Batman logo at all, really?
I was like, oh, I'm gaslighting you now.
God.
But
Uh,
I loved seeing how John and Hal work together. It shows the history these characters have. They fight together well because they know how each other operates. It's that well-oiled machine, if you will. So I enjoyed seeing that, and I loved seeing how they together made the bubble around the Star Shroud. As soon as he gets through one, then the other guy's got, say John's got one first, Hal's got one around it. As soon as John's gets destroyed, he puts another one over top of Hal's to keep him imprisoned. I thought that was really smart. And they do it without talking. You know what I mean?
mhm.
They don't really say a whole lot. So I thought that was really cool.
Well, you
Um,
like you said, a hint on their chemistry. I mean, to me, this had like all the makings of a core book. I mean, it was just it was a core book. I mean, if there would have been more Green Lanterns in it, this would have been a great core book.
yeah. The and here's the part again with Theros. He's lying there supposedly dead. And again, they show a close-up of his left hand, and there's no ring on it. Um, so little things like that. I'm like, I'm watching for details. I'm watching for clues as to what's coming up. And then you see stuff like that. I love to speculate. When I see stuff like that, I'm like, well, where's the ring? Um, but to see at the end, this issue end with the Red Lantern Mogo, I was
That's pretty awesome.
I was like, my jaw dropped. I was like, ugh, what
Like
a way to end it.
who does that to Mogo?
Right, right. I mean, it was one thing to see Sinestro as a red. It's another thing to see Kilowog as a yellow, but to see Mogo turned into basically a Red Lantern.
I mean, I guess I gotta ask, like, I'd like to see the surface. Like, are the seas boiling and stuff? Or like, is it red?
Yeah, yeah. Like, is it on fire there? Because I mean, it's certainly artistically the way it's depicted, it makes you think that the planet is literally on fire.
Right.
Um, but I thought it was a good. It ties everything together and it sets the stage for what's to come. And then it rolls into the Green Lantern book. And for all intents and purposes, this book becomes Green Lantern Corps for these two issues at least.
Yeah, it kind of does. You're right.
So let's jump right into the next one. Let's not even bother pausing.
All
Let's go through all three of these.
right,
Uh
let's do it.
we see Mogo attacking Thanagar. Bless you. Laying waste to Thanagar and them trying to escape. I thought, man, this is ballsy to destroy Thanagar. I mean, this isn't like you're just destroying a planet that isn't anything. This is a big thing. Uh, and there isn't a Hawkman book right now, correct?
I don't know what Hawkman's doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can imagine at some point there's got to be some impact there that we've got to hear about at some point.
But if that's Mogo crashing through that planet, how come he's got a Green Lantern emblem on the front again?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we're jumping from that to Jeremy Adams writing and Zermatt goes back at being the artist. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, slight artistic license. Obviously, the artists didn't talk to each other about how it was going to look. But ships are trying to escape. Again, another great moment for Carol, and I like how Jeremy Adams is investing in the character and showing her do things. And I love the fact that Hal gives her an important role to play. She's not just just do the little stuff, kid, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Right.
He's entrusting her to take a major role here, and she doesn't know what she's going to do, but he knows her well enough to know that she's going to figure it out. And they don't let the romantical stuff get in the way of the bigger picture, which I think is really good. And I love the line as Hal and John is walking away, and she says to Hal, "What are you going to do?" And Hal says, "What we were trained to do." Um,
I mean, that's just a Hal
right,
Jordan
right,
cool ass line,
right.
right?
Raise Hal,
He's
that's what
ready to
he's.
throw down is what is happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought it was really good. We find out that Callie's being tortured still, and that somehow she's the key to to Theros' plan of unlocking what's going on inside of the source battery. Um, I don't, I don't know what I feel about that. I mean,
Why would she have a connection to the source battery? And what
uh,
has that ever been determined before in any way she's been written? Other than the
no,
fact she's got this whatever device that
this
she has?
this gauntlet. They're basically trying to say, well, because she can unlock the gauntlet, maybe she can unlock, maybe she's the key to unlocking it. It's kind of a very loosey goosey. Like I don't see the correlation there. And now, okay, I know this is being recorded and it's going to get used against me, but this is one of those places where I actually agreed with Jeff Thorne. Jeff Thorne was going to, like, in his mind, she's not a lantern. I'm going to put her in a coma and just leave her there. I agreed with that 100%. One of the things that he was going to do had his book continued on was that he was going to, I don't want to say thin the herd because it sounds like he's killing characters off, but he was going to define other roles for people and try to make it so you didn't have so many Earth Lanterns. And I kind of resent the fact that they keep calling her Teen Lantern because she's not a Green Lantern. She's not.
She's not even doing anything.
No,
And she
no,
hasn't been in anything in a while.
no. Well, I mean, she's been in a coma, but I mean, her gauntlet is not. It's using Owen energy, but it's not a power ring. She's not a Green Lantern. They should just take the gauntlet away from her and be done with it. Um,
I mean, it's the same way when Hal had Kronos gauntlet.
right. That was the whole thing about that issue where Joe Mullane takes the gauntlet and puts it on, and I'm like, Hal has more chance of using that gauntlet than Joe does. Hal wouldn't stand there and just let her go put it on when he's got to recognize it as something similar to something he's wielded before. But
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
it was Jeff Thorne. Um, Interesting to hear Kelly have the conversations with Ellie. Um,
Well, there's your connection to the source lantern then, maybe.
maybe.
But
Uh,
that would mean that, I mean, that would mean that Ellie would have a, well, I guess she would if she's inside John's ring.
well, yeah, Ellie, it the confusing thing to me right now is John still ascended? I'm assuming he is, but he doesn't exude the power set that's the case. Did all of that power get put in creating Ellie, and that's why he's maybe depowered a little? It's a little it's a little unclear.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little hard to understand. Like if she's just a regular construct, she would have dissipated by now. To me, that's why I'm thinking, well, she's got to be made of something more than just another construct. She's got to be using some of that energy and some of the power that John had as an ascended individual. Otherwise, none of this would be a problem for John. But again, loved seeing Hal and John together, teaming up. Thought it, it just a good action sequences. Seeing them do the space battle thing. It's stuff we haven't seen in a while, you know.
Hey, we got a blue lantern in there too. You see that, right?
No, I didn't see it. Where was it? I didn't see it.
There's three of them, it looks like. Actually, a couple.
Is this some of the
Can't tell. I mean,
oh
they're
yeah,
hitting
yeah,
on
yeah,
them
yeah,
with a
yeah.
bulldozer.
Yep, hitting with a bulldozer. So some of the Spectrum lanterns that the United Planets lanterns
Oh,
that we've got
okay.
that Theros is having them channel different colors of the
Gotcha.
emotional spectrum.
Right.
Um, but I like the fact that Carol figures out things here. She helps get them power. It kind of goes awry as we find out later in the issue. Takes Carol off the page for a little while, out of the book for a while, but she helps him get away. I like the fact that when Hal sees the energy, he's like, "Atta girl." Again, I just think Adams is doing a good job of setting the tone for these two characters in this relationship that they have. He's not making it get in the way. He's not even serving it in this issue, but you're seeing the underlying relationship that they have, and I think that's really a good, powerful thing.
Hmm.
Star Shroud continues to do what he does. Um, I don't know. There was just some good stuff, and I liked seeing the scene where John uses the boxing glove. There's some nice little exchanges between the two of them. They both make the vehicle constructs and plow through people. there was just a lot to like about this issue. It's been a while since we've had a Green Lantern action adventure book with space battles, and I was like, man, I missed this. I didn't even realize I missed it until I was reading it.
Well, not only that, it's like it's got a lot of energy because it's all coming to a head, right? I mean, everything's
Yeah,
coming. I mean, especially when you got Larfleeze making multiple appearances, right?
right, right. This is like all the building that Jeremy Adams has done is building up to this big event, for lack of a better word. I mean, this is an event inside of the series. Uh, we see Theros kind of being reborn. The ring is back again, which was helpful.
Hmm.
Larfleeze is continuing to wreak havoc in the science cells on Oa. Then we see Guy giving Joe, rescuing Joe. Interesting dynamic between the two of them. I'm not a big Joe Mullane fan, but I like the interactions between Guy and Joe. I think, Guy is a character that people love to hate Guy Gardner, but he's such a versatile character because you can team him up with different people and play him in different ways. I mean, the way that he interacts with Shepard is much different than with Joe, but he serves a good purpose in both of them. And I think it shows how dynamic his character is. Um, so I thought it was
He's
good.
been written well lately.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some people miss the Justice League International version of Guy. I don't. I like this version of Guy who he 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 tempers himself maybe this much, but he doesn't say the asinine things he used to say that made you want to hate him. And then you see situations like this where, he's helping Joe Mullane and he's being this charismatic buddy guy. I don't know whether he was flirting with her. I don't know. Some people were like, "Oh, we should ship those two," and I'm like, I don't know about that, but uh, I enjoyed their interaction for what little was there. But then the end of the issue, the shocker for this one was them finding the predator. So she was trying to help guide them and navigate them, and she ended up taking them to wherever the predator is, which I thought was interesting because we haven't really seen the entities in a while. So I thought that was I don't want to keep using the word interesting, but to me it's exciting because are we going to see more of the entities as this unfolds? Is that what's going to help pull the entities in the spectrum back together? Is that
Yeah,
ultimately
that's a good thought. I like
yeah.
that.
I mean, because we see in the next issue, Kyle gets some big moments. Is ultimately is this the plot that Jeremy Adams is pacing out that we're going to get kind of a return back to the status quo? I don't know.
I'm kind of wondering why these guys can't find the Derlin flagship, the Hamoda. I mean, it's got to be out there somewhere. Just blow the damn thing up and call it a day.
Didn't Mogo do that?
Oh no, because it's in the next issue.
Oh, I think it's the next issue when it gets blown up.
Oh, is it this one?
Yeah, I think Mogo takes when Mogo arrives on Oa, when he gets to Oa, he
Maybe,
blows it
maybe.
up.
Okay, maybe I might have read through that. All right.
But yep, so no, we jump into issue 17, and this gets us caught up. They keep talking about the source ring, and at one point in this issue, there's a section where they are giving us information, like there's a little bit of explanation text about the unseen, and they say, I want to find it because I want to actually quote it. But they talk about them being wielders of the
Magic users wielding source rings, holders of the
yes.
quarantine servants of the United Planets.
So makes it sound like they're wielding source rings, but in the same issue, they find a source ring and it is stolen, and they make it sound like it's the only one. And that was where I got the biggest confusion out of this issue. Because at one point, the unseen have them, supposedly, and then we see that there's one when it's stolen later on. So I'm really confused about that part. Did, am I reading too much into it? I don't know.
No, but you never do read stuff. You always find the little plot holes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know whether it's a mistake or do they have those rings? But I was like, if they have those rings, then why wouldn't Star Shroud just go and kill one of them and take their ring? But maybe he found it easier this way. But anyway, um, so the unseen are there. They see that they're torturing Jessica Cruz. One of the comments that they made about Mogo was that now that Theros is air quote dead because they believe the Durlans believe him to be dead, that they said, well, Mogo will eventually no longer be controlled and manipulated by Theros to be a red. If that's true, then the same has got to be true for Kilowog. So when I'm reading this scene where she's being tortured and then they leave, and they give you a close up on Kilowog's eye, I'm wondering in the back of my head, well, is Kilowog still being manipulated? Or has he snapped out of it, but he hasn't let anybody know yet because he's trying to find out what's going on? Because he's been off the books since Korgar blew up, the whole explosion way back when. He's probably been in the background as a character that we just haven't seen. But does he know what's going on? Is that him? Like, okay, now I've got to figure out how do I take care of Jessica, but not tip my hand because I can't take on these unseen guys by myself. Or,
Well,
or 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 do you think he's still glazed? That's just a glazed over look, and he's still under control,
worth noting, he's never been dead, and I was never convinced that he was dead.
right? Early
It is
early
good,
on, we were all like, the reason why this is because Kilowog's dead, and then we amended it to, well, Hal thinks Kilowog's dead.
right? No, I think it alludes to him to something going on behind. I don't think Kilowog has had complete control taken over him. I don't think he's the type of character that can be manipulated to the effect where it's complete. There might be vestiges of him that are holding on to some of the willpower he had from his regular, whatever, how he regularly acts or whatever. But I would think that Kilowog is going to tip his hand sooner or later, and it's going to be a cool way when he does it.
Yeah, in the back of my mind and in my heart, I see him as is him snapping out of it, that he knows that something's going on. He
Hmm.
just doesn't know all the detail yet. Um, we see the Green Lanterns reconnect with the crypt. Kelly shows up and tells them that they need to help with Kelly, and then we see Theros evolving into whatever it is he's evolving into. And I don't have a clue as to what he's doing here, other than he's got the Dark Star ring, and I think by the end of this he actually calls himself Dark Star.
Well, he's got the Dark Star emblem on that, kind of the
Yes.
Dark Star emblem. I mean,
Yep.
it looks like it is.
Yes. So he's going to obviously turn into something else. He's I don't want to say evolving, but he's definitely changing. Um, Star Shroud shows up, and this is where he takes the ring. Which obviously it's an easier target to take the ring from these little bug creatures than it is to take it from the unseen. So maybe they all had rings together. Just it implied to me that with her being here with the ring, that this was the research they were doing to tap into the source battery and to do what it is they were going to do. And that's why they called it a source ring. So that's why that whole blurb earlier when they said they wielded the source rings, I was like, well, if they've already got them, what's the big deal? But hopefully there's more of an explanation there. Maybe it was just a slip up.
Well, when you start giving rings their own kind of personal traits, I mean, they do tend to to have an offer of explanation. I mean, even the next page, this ring is different. You know,
Yeah,
it seems our masters, they hide things. I mean, sure, you can have an allusion to it, but you can't just leave that kind of plot thread hanging, right? You got to tie
right.
that up.
Well, the
Or
pro
or else it gets messy because
yeah,
then you got, well, what is John? Is he ascended? Is he a Green Lantern? It doesn't matter what we call him. Are we just getting away from titles these days and he's
right.
just John Stewart now? I
Is
mean,
his mother still in the ring? Uh, you
that
know,
too.
when you start making all of these exceptions, it makes it hard to keep track of all those little details, and then you screw up. Or, when it changes, when a character changes hands, let's say that John was going to be the star of the Green Lantern Corps book, and it wasn't going to be Jeremy Adams. Would that new writer remember what Philip Kennedy Johnson did with the mother in the ring thing, or would he forget about it? And then you have this big gaping plot hole.
Yeah.
It's the downside to all that, right?
And downside to writing, because whatever legacy you want to leave behind doesn't mean that the next person's going to follow it.
Right. And then the
Yeah.
people like the readers like ourselves who stay invested in these characters from writer to writer to writer, we're looking at this as one ongoing story, and it makes it kind of hard
Yeah.
to be invested in a mythology when everything the foundations keep changing. Loved seeing Alan continue the fight. It was cool just to see Green Lanterns out, just the big battles. We haven't had any of this in a while. So again, it was great to see that.
The main man, Simon's there.
Yeah, yeah. And here's another allusion to the unseen. They talk about the star heart. And there's this whole thing, they make a big point of it, the star heart, we can see it is beautiful. I don't know what's up with that. So I- there, there's got to be something brewing there. I mean, Adams isn't just saying that for the sake of saying it and fill pages.
No, there's something there.
Yeah, there definitely has to be something there. Um, so Mogo shows up. John and Hal are out racing Mogo. And again, this is one of those things where I'm like, well, geez, if John was ascended, he could have gotten there in no time. And Hal's flown near the speed of the Speed Force in space. Why is Mogo keeping on their tail? But again, it's that whole, every writer does something different with these characters, and then it makes it hard to know, well, what are the limits of their power? Because it's only what you want it to be in the moment.
Mhm. Right. And then again, you got a green Mogo with the lantern emblem, but not the
Yeah.
raised lantern.
And then you see when Mogo launches this blaze of energy, it hits the Durlin ship and blows it up.
Oh, there it was. The Moto.
And
Whatever.
Hal and John arrive on and then Sinestro shows up. And again, something I didn't see coming at all. And that's one of the things I respect Adams as a writer is he pulls these elements out. We hadn't talked about Sinestro in a while, and here he is, and he basically depowers Mogo. He knocks him unconscious, but it's too much power for Sinestro to hold in. And again, he collapses and Hal catches him. But you see the emotional spectrum start to go haywire as Star Shroud starts using this ring. And then here's Kyle. And I thought that was such a great moment for Kyle because it seems like Adams had him kind of just, as we were talking about on the Lantern cast, Kyle's just been kind of over in the corner. And we get reminded that he's there when you see him, clutching his knees and rocking back and forth and not really doing anything. Adams wants to remind us that he's there, and then here's his moment to shine, his big moment. And I was like, okay, Kyle as the White Lantern. I think honestly that's his first best destiny, and he even calls it his destiny at this point too. But I think for Kyle as a character, the tricky part with Kyle is he was created to replace Hal in the entire Green Lantern Corps mythos and stood on his own. But now that the Corps is back, everybody has struggled to find him a real role because he's now just another Lantern, which is it happens with all of these characters, right? Because it's happened with Kyle. When's the last time that Jessica's anxiety really played a role in her story?
Hmm.
When's the last time that Simon's character defining traits were present in anything other than just being a background character? They become they become just another Green Lantern because I don't want to say there's nothing special about the characters, but what's there isn't carried over from writer to writer.
Well, it's what's special has been left behind.
Right,
And what
exactly.
keeps them special isn't written anymore because they don't have they don't have a good like light to shine in.
Right.
I mean, when you're written, even from panel to panel, or page to page, or book to book, doesn't matter how much time you got, you still ingest life into that character. But if you've got no written tonnage for a person, you got no narrative for that individual to exist, you're kind of basing your own premise off that individual's characteristics on what you read prior.
Right,
So
right,
it doesn't even show growth, right? I mean, because it's like, well, how long ago did Simon Baz do this? And now Simon Baz is doing this, but how did he grow? I don't see, you know what I mean? That there's kind of like, you miss a lot. I
right.
think that's kind of the cause and effect of having comic book characters, especially a lot of them.
Yeah.
You
It's,
know,
it's a
and and then when you have a gap, I mean, it's like you got to think forward thinking, right? So, oh, I'm writing this character, and this is what this character is going to do at this book, and but then you got to remember what book and what that character
Right.
did to make sure you tie that in 50 issues down the line, or whatever it is.
It's part of that,
So,
these are corporate toys, right? And you as a
right,
creator are playing with these corporate toys. If you're going to change them in any significant way, you either need to unchange them by the time you leave or make sure that the changes you made are carried forward. And it's not up to you when you leave that the next writer is going to follow along with that. But again, if you go back and look at the Thorn run where it left, Simon Bass had a completely new role and it's
yeah,
been kind of just ignored. And that's the downside to serialized fiction where the creators change. If you
yeah,
look at it like something like the Peanuts, how many years did the Peanuts run? But it was always Charles Schultz.
sure,
And when it comes to comics, writers stick around for, in some cases 10 years at the most, and that's an extremely long run. There's no guarantee that the things that they put into place are going to be carried from writer to writer. But as the reader, you're left with this, well, wait a minute, I thought this was this. And so as a reader, sometimes it gets a little frustrating. And I can see for Kyle fans why it was frustrating because he was made the White Lantern and then it was just abruptly dropped.
right.
He had if you remember, there was the beginnings of a White Lantern Corps.
I remember. That was good stuff back then. I didn't
Yeah.
like what they did with Kyle back then.
And the problem with Kyle as a character is that because his sole purpose for creation was to take on the mantle and to take over all of those things, and now that's been undone, where does it leave the character? How does he stand out? And they've been struggling. And I think the White Lantern stuff is the perfect evolution of that character. So I hope it sticks. I don't know as if it's going to stick, but I kind of hope it does.
I believe in you, Kyle. Go on with your bad self and your cool mask.
He flies into the source battery, and they assume he's dead. They say he's dead. And then we see Theros as the Dark Star. And then they give it away. Kyle Rayner lives right at the right at the end. We didn't get a chance to have a funeral yet. There was no memorial service. Uh, but it's interesting that they tease the battle on Oa, Kilowog, the Avatar of Fear, and the secret of the Source Lantern. So it'll be interesting to see. This is one of the plot points from the Thorn run that obviously they're carrying forward is this whole Source Lantern thing. I think it's I think this is Jeremy Adams' way of unraveling that knot and using it as a plot point. And you and I have said it for a while that Kyle Rayner is key to this being returned to the new status quo. And we're seeing it here. So I'm I like it when we speculate on things and it turns out right because you were picking up on the details that the writer's putting out there. It was interesting to see this picture at the end, though. Like, what's going on inside of the source battery thing? Because there's a character there, and then Kyle's on the ground. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Who are all these other beings that are here? I'm jazzed to find out what's going to happen next with this stuff.
Well, that not only that, who's at the center of that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who's this? Who's the character in the center? I don't know. I mean, is this the other John Stewart? Because there were two John
Oh,
Stewarts. Is this the
I
other
think I
one?
know who. I think
What
I
do you
know
what do
who it
you,
is. I think
who do you think it is?
it's gonna be Batman.
I knew it. I knew it. I was like, okay, we'll play along.
That's DC pulling out all the stops.
It must be BD's sales bump, right?
Right.
But yeah, I really want to know what's going on with all that. Uh, I know, I have faith in Adams to stick the landing. I think when we were on the Lantern Cast and talking about the book, it doesn't feel like even though we're like 17 issues in, we've had a finished plot line yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had some subplots resolved here and there, but like what's the main story here? So it's interesting to see how this continues to evolve. And I'm not criticizing it in any way, shape, or form because I'm loving this run. Uh,
Oh, it's fantastic. And
it,
just to know what's gonna come in the next issue, I mean, you got all these things happening. And not only that, what's going on with Sinestro?
Right. There's so many things going on. I guess that's why I said I sometimes feel like I need a scorecard. There's so many things to keep track of because he's juggling so many balls at once.
Hmm.
And we haven't had anybody really do that since the Johns run. You know, Venditti was good in what some of the things that he did, and I like a lot of the Venditti run. The new 52 stuff more so than his initial run. Uh, but this feels, I don't know, it feels exciting, I guess is the word I choose to go with. Uh, and I'm literally like I feel like I did during the Johns run when it comes to the day that, I'm like looking forward to when the book comes out. And I'm back to going to my comic shop on Wednesday when the book comes out to get it because I can't wait to read it. And yeah, you can read it digitally, but there's something to be said about getting the book you're excited about and picking it up and having it in your hands, new comic book smell, and reading the book. I mean, I remember during the Johns run, one of the things I used to do was I was looking so forward to reading the book that I'd go pick up the book and I would read it in the parking lot before I even left.
Hmm.
And I feel that way about this run. If I can't give it a better compliment than that, I don't know what else I could say.
Well, I mean, it's going on issue 18, right? So
Hmm.
you're talking a year and a half worth of book.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's a long time. Gosh, that goes by fast.
Right. And there's a couple issues that aren't even included in this.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, and there's that too.
So I'm jazzed. I can't wait to see what comes next. I can't wait to see where Adams is taking it because he obviously has a long-term plan.
Hey, I need to print off the like I did in the Morrison run, all the little ID cards for the entire cover.
Oh, yeah.
I need to do that for the Jeremy Adams run too.
Cool.
That'd be fun.
All right. Well, we have a lot of listener feedback. I don't think we're going to get through all of it tonight because there's been a lot. The episode we did when we did the rant about the Kyle Chandler casting has elicited a lot of feedback. So, and I want to give people their due to point their points of view and get them out there for people. Uh, we may not have a lot to respond to because I think we've kind of um, beat it to death a little, and I don't want people to get frustrated with hearing me go on and on about it. So we might not say a whole lot, but anyway, we'll take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll get to some of your listener feedback, and we'll see how many we get through.
Our first message is from Stuart. He has some comments on the Lanterns TV show and episode 250. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Fun rant. Personally, I'm indifferent to the casting due to the show feeling a little phoned in. Like, oh, we need Green Lantern in our DC cinematic universe, and there's so much mythology in GL. Let's just trunk most of it to get a Green Lantern on the Justice League. I think it's a shame because there is potential to do a proper GL show as a science fiction show like The Expanse. Would love to see a sci-fi 2001-esque Denis Villeneuve Green Lantern to contrast Nolan's Bond-esque bad epics. But unfortunately, studios are more focused on universe building to make a big blockbuster. I get the feeling that Gunn is trying to give WB an MCU Infinity War with DC, rather than showing what makes the individual characters great and unique in their own right. Same with my concern with the Authority giving WB their version of the boys. Overall, Gunn's take is just not for me.
Hey, Stuart, good to hear from you. Listen, you got some great ideas. I am kind of baffled by the fact that, and I don't think we should keep talking about the green. Well, we're going to have to keep talking about the Green Lantern series when it comes out. But the one thing that baffles me is number one has always been why is Tom King involved? I don't think he knows lanterns as good as he thinks that he does. But I think overall in that, I don't. Why isn't it a space epic like you mentioned here? A good sci-fi. I don't know why you can't. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, for lack of a better words, was a good sci-fi epic. And Gunn did that. And I don't see, and I've always said this before, where I've always kind of seen the Green Lantern Corps kind of having its own quality, kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy does. It's an offshoot. It runs by its own organization, whatever you want to call it. But no, I like your idea. I I mean, I'm with Myron on a lot of things and a lot of aggravations that he has because I mean Myron has a big personal interest in this. And I'm really hesitant to say of where this series is going to go, but I would like you had said in your post, I mean, WB when you got a big corporation like WB running the money machine, I mean, you're basically under the thumb of what they want. You know, if they don't like the direction it's going, they're going to put their thumb on it. They're going to tell you. You know, this recent thing with Gunn and having to do the first Superman didn't receive. Who cares? I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't think that adds any kind of weight to how it's going to be received. And it doesn't affect me as a fan just because the first trailer didn't screen well. I could give two, you know what, about how many people sat in that first trailer and what they thought about it, because they're not going to feel the same way I did about it.
Well, we don't know why they didn't like the trailer. Maybe
Right.
it could be
Yeah.
something as simple as maybe it gave away too much plot, or maybe it didn't give away enough plot, or
Right.
it could have nothing to do with the quality of the film. It could be simply the mechanics of it.
Right. And then this is what people like us, we pick up on that news item and then we hinge on it. And it's like, oh my God, what's the problem now? That's why I don't put much weight into that kind of nonsense. You know, I want to wait and see what the writing is on the wall,
Right.
Stuart.
And
And that's what I'm waiting for.
Stuart makes a point that, casting aside, the thing that concerns me a little bit about Lanterns is grounded and realistic are not two words I would associate with the Green Lantern franchise.
Doesn't really go.
Like Stuart's saying as well, I'm expecting a sci-fi epic. I'm not expecting a murder mystery in the deep south or something. That Green Lanterns aren't detectives. This is a story, and it came up. I think somebody else's comment was, it makes more sense for Martian Manhunter or The Question. Agreed.
Yeah.
Um,
If you're gonna, yeah. And you can have them two characters doing a detective-esque thing, or Batman for crying out loud. He's your detective. Jesus.
right.
And why aren't people getting mad because of that?
Is it
Whatever.
because it's a
Batman's
space?
a detective, not Hal
Right.
Jordan, not John Stewart.
One has to assume there's a connection to the core or something cosmic in this regard. Otherwise, why would you do Green Lantern with it? But like Stuart said, it's like, well, did they just kind of phone it in? Okay, we've got this idea for a murder mystery, but we need to tie a DC property to it. Let's use Green Lantern. Is that what happened? I don't know. We won't know until we see the story is. But at this point, it's kind of hard to get excited for it because it's not. We all have the kind of the preconceived notion and expectations of what we want to see, and when we hear something that doesn't line up with it, we're going to have a reaction. And I by and large, there are some people that seem to be excited for it. The people that I interact with, or the people that I see online in various social forums and social media and comic book forums and so on, there seems to be a massive for the most part. So that's to me is a little disturbing because you want people to be jazzed for this. But if you said, hey, we're going to do a Green Lantern murder mystery set in the South on Earth, that's
And
not what comes to
and
mind, right?
and South, well, wait a minute, not set in the South. They should set it in South America or something like that. You know, put it
Yeah.
someplace random. But I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, good points. I do like your Villanova reference, you know, making a
Yes.
sci-fi epic. I mean, I don't think he would, with all due respect to Green Lanterns, I don't think he would put himself in the category to do a Green Lantern kind of sci-fi movie. Dude
Yeah.
seems like he's out there with Dune somewhere. So
Stuart,
right on, Stuart. Thanks, man.
thanks for everything, man. Powering, why don't you give us the next one?
The next comment is from Ulf, who is also commenting on the Lantern Show. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
TBH, we haven't even seen an official DCU film from Gunn yet. His Superman sounds like the man gets it. While I'm not crazy about the casting and likely decision of sidelining Hal for the boring military angle on John, much more interesting as a socially aware architect as he was created as, the true detective Earthbound angle sounds like just what we need. I'm saying this as a lifelong GL fan who started reading his Silver Age stuff at the collector's shop in the 1970s.
Hey, Ulf, thanks so much for reaching out and contacting us. And yeah, we haven't seen anything about it. It sounds like Gunn gets it. I don't think he is involved with Lanterns as much as he is with the other projects. It seems like this is a Lindelof, Tom King thing, and he's like, okay, yeah, I agree with this. Go ahead and go do your thing. Is the way it feels. Um, so we'll see. I mean, I don't know if I like the idea of the True Detective thing. Obviously, the way I've talked about things, I don't like that, but whatever, you know. It could be it could be great. We don't know enough. All we have is the notions we and the ideas we get from what little we hear. And some people like myself, it doesn't resonate. For some people, it does, and I'm glad it does for those that like it. We'll see. Again, we won't know until we actually see the first footage or get an idea of the tone of the show. It can completely change everybody's notions about it.
Mhm.
So, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us the next one?
Our next message is from Eric. He has comments about the Jeremy Adams run and the relationship between Green Lantern Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Hey Myron and Phil. It's Eric or Celtic 5-27 here. And it's been a while since I've wrote in, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on the Jeremy Adams run, Hal and Carol's relationship, and the Kyle Chandler casting. First off, I want to say I'm really enjoying Adams' run on Green Lantern so far. It's the most fun I've had reading GL since Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I will say I don't like that 2 times now the series has been interrupted by crossover events. That's not to say I haven't enjoyed the tie-in issues, but in the end they seem to have little impact and just slowed down the main overall story. I appreciate that Adams wants Green Lantern to be included in the big DC events, but unless Hal and Core play a major role in the story, I'm over the DC event crossovers. I'm also ready to be done with the United Planets and Theros storyline. I was hoping the Civil Corps special would wrap it up, but it appears Adams is not done with them just yet. I hope by the end of the story we eventually get the Guardians of the Universe back in charge of the Corps. I don't know if that will be the Young Guardians, the Templar Guardians, or just the classic ones, but I know I want Ganthet there. I've always thought of him as the Gandalf or Dumbledore of the Green Lantern mythos, and I've always enjoyed the mentor/leadership role he brought to Hal and the other Earth Lanterns. Speaking of Hal and Carol's relationship, I'm glad to see they're finally together again, but I really hope it sticks this time. At the end of both John's run and Vendetti's, Hal and Carol were together only for the next writer to come in and have them broken up. Now that it looks like Carol is becoming more of a hero, which let me say I'm very curious to see what her role is in the Justice League, but I do like her being on the team. I hope we see her and Hal team up more with the League as a couple. I also feel like it might be time for them to finally get married. I know Hal isn't one for commitment, but it's the logical next step in their relationship, and I think it would make Carol happy. If Hal ever goes off-world for who knows how long, he'll know he has Carol to come back home to, and he won't have to worry about her moving on. I think Adams would be the perfect writer to do it, and it would be a nice callback to Jeff Johns' last issue of Green Lantern. Also, how great would it be to see Ollie and Barry argue over who will be Hal's best man, only for it to be Kilowog? Anyway, sorry for going on so long. I guess I had a lot to say, so I'll leave my thoughts on the Kyle Chandler casting for another email.
Eric, good to hear from you again. It's been a while. So I think everybody here is on the same page. Adam's a big hit when it comes to this run. I mean, if you look at it from the collected whole, I think it's really, really high up there as far as the marks go for his writing. I think it definitely ups the ante for the Green Lantern universe moving forward, because I think what Adams is building can be built upon even further. I think there's a lot of stuff that he has even dealt with so far that can still be dealt with even more. So, but that's a sign of a good writer, right? You don't just come in and do aesthetics and topical nonsense just to think you're gonna do good with a character, and then all of a sudden, you don't leave anything behind. But I think Adams has really set his footing, and you could see it get stronger. I think after a few issues, like from the beginning to where it is now, I've seen it only just grow in strength. And like any comic book issue, you're gonna have there might be some slow parts, there might be a slow issue altogether. I think all put together, though, that it hasn't lagged. I mean, you put this in a collected, it's going to just stream. I mean, it's going to go sweet. And reading it monthly is kind of hard sometimes, because like you can glean so much from reading. Like, I mean, if I was to sit here and read all 50 of these G.I. Joe comics, right? I mean, I'd have a lot to say right afterwards. Whereas in you read every month and you're waiting for the payoff, it takes longer to get there. But
Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes storylines that are especially long storylines like what we're seeing here seem to drag on is because we're reading it monthly in little bits of installments. Whereas reading it together and as a big story, it reads so much differently. Even these 3 issues we reviewed in this episode, it was different reading them individually when they came out versus reading them as one body of work. And it read better that way. But
well,
I totally get the point though. I'm I want to see what's going to happen with it, but I'm also ready to get past it and see what's next.
do some more stuff. Going on 2
Yeah.
years of a Durlin war.
Right. And I love the analogy of Ganthet and being the Gandalf and Dumbledore. It's funny when Green Lantern the animated series came out, and there was that whole scene in the beginning when Ganthet is taking Hal around Oa and shows him the interceptor. And he knows he's doing it because he knows Hal's is going to take it. I got a big Dumbledore vibe out of it. So to see him call that out too, I was like, oh, that's cool. Because that's kind of how I always saw him too in that. And I do want to see Ganthet back. Ganthet is a character I miss. I miss the Guardians of old before Jeff Johns decided to make them bad. I always preferred the Guardians as characters who had evolved so much that they lost the ability to relate to other beings because they were so old and they'd been through so much. But the Ganthet still had that, like he was your spry grandfather who still remembered the joy of being a kid.
Or
And
he's curious about stuff, he
yeah,
took liberties on different occasions with Hal.
yeah. So I kind of want to see some of that again. But I also understand the want to do something different and unique, and maybe they have the lanterns govern themselves. I don't know what we're going to get. I can see both sides of it. And like you, Eric, I'm glad to see they're finally doing the relationship thing with Hal and Carol. I want to see it stick. The downside is somewhere along the way, something's going to change it. I don't see them ever giving those characters the ability to have a happily ever after. But who knows? Maybe we will. And like you, I'd love to see Ollie and Barry fighting over who's going to be the best man if they got married. I think that'd be great. But thanks for writing in. I always love hearing your opinions. Power Ring, why don't you give us the next one?
The last message is from Taylor, and he has some comments to share about the casting of Kyle Chandler as Green Lantern Hal Jordan. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Myron and Phil. Following up on my previous message about the Lanterns show, I share your disappointment that they cast Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan, because that means there's little to no hope of Jeff Johns' run being done justice in the DCU, or even being adapted at all. While I think Kyle Chandler has the essence of Hal more than Josh Brolin or Ewan McGregor, he is still far too old, and my excitement for the show has been almost completely diminished. Hal is not just your generation's Green Lantern, he is the most prominent Green Lantern. I like Jon Stewart, so I don't mind him having a big presence in James Gunn's DCU, but they will have to get creative and come up with good news stories for him. He doesn't have nearly the development and supporting cast or rogues gallery in the comics that Hal has. With that being said, one time that Sinestro affected John was in Scott Snyder's Justice League run, which involved the Ultraviolet Lantern Corps. I think it would be cool if they used the Ultraviolet Corps in the DCU. I especially love their oath, but I'm not sure how they would adapt it. They would have to establish all the other Lantern Corps first. James Gunn said that the DC animated universe, the one with the Justice League cartoon, inspired his DCU, but there are a couple problems I have with that. One, that universe ended before the legendary Jeff Johns era of Green Lantern began, so the Green Lantern stories in the DCU feel more second-rate in hindsight. 2, he had a relationship with Hawkgirl in the show, which they should not do for the DCU because there is a significant age gap between the actors for Jon Stewart and Kendra Saunders. Also, I'm puzzled by your response to the idea that they could make prequel stories with Hal Jordan when he's younger. I thought that would at least be better than the Lantern show, and they could possibly use this to establish the emotional spectrum. Can you help me understand your perspective? I'm a big fan of DC overall, and I'm looking forward to the other projects on the slate. I think the Authority could be awesome, but my overall enthusiasm for the DCU has been diminished because of the casting for Hal Jordan. The only Green Lantern concept I'm hoping they use is the emotional spectrum, though I wouldn't be surprised if they ignore that as well. Let me know your thoughts.
Taylor, thanks for writing in. I don't want to go too much more into the casting of Cal Chandler. I agree with you, though. I think he's a good actor. He would have been, if he was cast for the Green Lantern movie back in 2011, I'd have been all for it. Uh, but just isn't what I was expecting. And I think he's closer to being Hal than Josh Brolin could have been. I get that, but it's not my thing. And I have concerns about what they're going to do with John because unfortunately, John doesn't have the rich history. So whatever you're going to do is going to have to be something original. And the problem I have with that, it isn't that I don't want them to do something original with these characters, but they did that with the Justice League cartoon, and they made John a much, at least in my opinion, from my perspective, a much less interesting character by making him a military guy who did nothing more than shoot laser blasts out of his power ring. John is a better character than that, but we've boiled him down to that, and so many people have latched onto that as that's who they think John is, that even Jeff Johns felt like he was forced to tie him in and try to merge these two versions of John Stewart together. So we'll see what they do. At this point, I'm kind of over it. But
I mean, aren't we all?
yeah. But like you, I really there's so much good stuff in the Johns run that could be used. I mean, the ability to do a Sinestro Corps War story and some of those other plots. There were so many cool moments we could have. I don't think that we're ever going to get to see anything like that. I would even if we could just get an animated version of some of it, I'd be okay with that. But I would love to see we got a 3-part Crisis on Infinite Earths movie. Couldn't we at least get a 2-part Blackest Night R-rated animated film? Please.
The Crisis movie wasn't even that good anyway. So
No, I hated it. Anyway, why don't we call this it for this episode, and that'll leave us some material for the next one. And we'll take a quick pause and come back and wrap everything up. Power Ring. Please tell everybody how they can be a part of our show.
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
fellow Owens, episode 252, right? Did I get that right?
Yes, you got it right.
Right on. That was a fun episode. And I
Yeah.
gotta say that, I like what DC's doing with their writers. They got a lot of good talent. They got a good pool going right now. I mean, the artist work has just been great on some of these issues. I mean, and some of these names are flying out of left field, right? I mean, you don't hear the same names like you always heard anymore, right? I mean, sure, you got your name stays, but a lot of these new artists, there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, comic book art is, like you and I've said many occasions, it's all subjective. So it's all about whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and really for the most part, every book I've been reading, I've enjoyed the artwork that's been in it. So it's good. It's good. It just has to serve the story.
It does.
Not everybody's going to be an Ivan Rice or a Doug Mackey or somebody like that, but everything is looking good. And there's always going to be, I don't mean to over criticize the Dark Star ring thing, but when it's a major plot point, it seems like it'd be important for it to be in the character's hand. If I hadn't been when I was reading the issue, that's where I was like the most hung up. And then when I reread it, I was like, okay, I'm still hung up on it, but at least I know what happens at this point. But when I read that book the first time, I was like, man, what's going on? Because I felt like I was left hanging.
I get it. I love
But
it.
as always, we appreciate everybody for giving us some of your time and listening to us ramble on about Green Lantern books. Next episode, we are going to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of Green Lantern Rebirth. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since
I
Green
can't-
Lantern Rebirth.
I can't believe it. Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely crazy. So next episode, we're going to talk about all 6 issues of the 2004 event, which led to the Emerald rebirth of the Green Lantern Corps and led to an amazing era. I can't wait to talk about it. It's one of my favorite stories.
Reflectively, Adams is doing the same thing. So
yeah. It's just an excuse for me to reread it, is what it is.
no wrong in that. No wrong in that.
Not at all. Not at all. All right, folks. Well, I hope everybody's had a good holiday. For those of you that aren't in the U.S., we had Thanksgiving here just last week or so, and so I hope everybody in the U.S. had a great Thanksgiving holiday as we get ready for the end of the year. As always, we're thankful for everyone who gives us time of their day to enjoy listening to us. At least I hope you enjoy listening to us. Until next time, though, please treat each other well, especially this time of the year. Keep that power ring charged and make every day your brightest day. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much for watching this Green Lantern video from the blog of Oa. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find even more great Green Lantern videos, reviews, podcasts, and more at our main website, www.blogofoa.com. So until next time, keep your power ring charged and make every day your brightest day.